Should we begin?
So I think it is time to begin, and it's very exciting to see all these people joining our call today. So thank you for making the time to be here. Before I say anything else, I thought we could just take a moment to acknowledge the fact that we have arrived and we are taking our seat here together. And in whatever way is appropriate or feels right to you, we can acknowledge that we're here. And whether that is a bow or just a moment of mental acknowledgement, let's just take this moment to be grateful that we're all here together. So this call is called Sharing Wisdom, and it is part of the Families and Children Shambhala program. It has begun from there, and it is a monthly gathering where we discuss issues that concern us, that concern our families. And the Families and Children in Shambhala program has been active for decades and providing an opportunity to hold a view for children and families within that context. And here, this is an open call and everyone is invited, just giving the context of how this began. So in this current iteration, we have this group. And each month at the end of the call, we take a moment to decide what we're going to be discussing the following month. And right now, we're lucky enough to have the next 3 months to deal with the topic of the climate. And for those who are interested in kind of weighing in on how these questions develop, we will have time at the end of the call, and people can stay on if they want to be part of how we put together the prompts and organize further. So I'll mention that later. So the question that we're going to be looking at today is what future could be possible for our children and their children if we respond collectively with wisdom and deep compassion to the ecological change in our world. So we'll be looking and turning around that question over the next few months. And I would like to welcome our guest today, Brother Fulfillment. So I'm going to read a little bit about him to introduce him to you. Brother Fulfillment is currently living in New York City, and he began his spiritual journey with baptism at age 28. He was ordained by Thich Nhat Hanh at Plum Village in 2007 and received the Dharma Teacher Lamp Transmission in 2016. Currently, he's supporting communities and friends active in resisting and responding to the global climate crisis in the New York City area. His greatest joy is seeing people, including himself, heal and transform and open up to love in all kinds of wonderful ways. His dream is fostering and supporting all kinds of embodied communities of resilience, a little bit everywhere, communities that are engaged in deep healing and radical justice, helping to evolve consciousness and shift culture. So there's so much more to say, and I'm going to pass it over to him now so that he may lead the beginning of our call and our time together. And just one quick second, I did forget to say that the call is being recorded, and it's for the purpose that people who are not here today will be able to hear the call later. And if anyone has anything they would like to say but would not like to be recorded, then stay on after we stop at 1 p.m. and we can hear you then. Okay. Thank you so much, and welcoming Brother Fulfillment.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I am Brother Fulfillment. Thank you so much for introducing me. I hope that I can share a little bit about some of all of that stuff. I am called Brother Man by my friends, and you're welcome to call me that too. That's a Vietnamese word, man. It means fulfillment. It's given to me by Thich Nhat Hanh, so short name there. Feeling really grateful to be with you and to have a chance to experience, explore together, feel into is something term that I like to use sometimes to allow ourselves to our bodies, the wisdom of our bodies to tell us what's important in the present moment. So before saying too much more, I wanted to have us just do a little bit of settling practice. I could guide that, some meditative practice. But even before that, just sitting here and hearing the welcoming and the introduction and sitting here on the ground, pretty close to the ground in Manhattan on this island, I'm just reminded of the connection to the people that are here that have been living here on Manhattan for thousands of years, the Lenape people. And I'm wondering, I know that you're all sitting in different places. Also, it looks like all over the world. So if we can start maybe an invitation is to start our meditation practice by finding a stable center in terms of the alignment of our posture that allows us to balance and lengthening the spine if that feels good, and doing any kind of movement that lets you settle and really feel the weight of your body being held on the earth, and sensing into that connection, that support that is always there under us, and that actually feel the contact, the connection, physical connection between our bodies and the floor, which connects to the earth. And as we do that, to invite the land ancestors of the place, wherever we are at, to be present with us, to acknowledge the wisdom from countless generations before us, knowing how to care for a place, to give that a moment, and also the land ancestors that are inside of us, because many of us have been a journey on our ancestors have crossed continents, just to acknowledge the wisdom of our own ancestors that we carry. Maybe noticing how that feels in the body, other sensations we might pick up on that are soothing are often helpful to start with. Sometimes that's the rhythm of the breath as the body moves, or the heartbeat. Can also be that sense of contact, the connection that we feel on the chair or the ground, feet on the ground. Can also be sensations like in the hands or the face or around the heart that feel warm, soft. Allowing ourselves the space to connect to our bodies, our sensate experience right now. Honor that and allow it to be what it is. Curious if we want to be, we are, that's available. And with some of that sensate experience, often there's a connection to what we feel on an emotional level, different energies. Often, many energies are often circulating at the same time. You might notice some calming or peace, and also some different kinds of agitation or tension, anxiety, even irritation, energies like joy, sadness. Just being curious about what's alive for us and how that connects to our bodies for a few moments, grounding all of that as it's being held by the earth. And now opening our awareness to another dimension of our experience, perhaps our mental energy, what we notice in terms of our perceptions, thoughts, internal thoughts or vocalizations, visualizations that are coming to the surface, and allowing all those things to integrate our sensations, our feelings, our thoughts, and noticing how they weave together, welcoming, making space, grounding all of that. Noticing how things are changing and flowing in time, how our attention moves. Maybe noticing some of the intention that we have for today, why we have joined this call, what is important to us, what feeling might be associated with that or emotion. Maybe many reasons. See what's alive for you. And then I'd like to just, if your eyes are closed, to keep them closed, but to tune in a little bit with the sense of sound. You can hear my voice, but there are other sounds likely in your space, soft or louder, near or far. Just noticing how sound opens your senses up to the space around you, being curious about that, listening to some of the stillness, welcoming sound, and seeing how it connects us to our environment. And then the same with the sense of sight. We can notice even before we open our eyes, if they're closed, the color that's there, how it is. See into the eyelids and then blinking slowly if you'd like to take in form and color. Also, with curiosity, there's the screen probably you have, but there's also shapes and forms around you, color, light. And as you do that, you can move, you can start to allow the body to move a little bit as we look. It has its own rhythms, so you can allow also movement to be there and curious about that as you take in, just taking in your space to see if there's something also that's pleasant for you, a color or an image, something grounding that helps you rest, can be very helpful for soothing and connecting, so we can meditate with our eyes open as well. The doorway to be present. Okay, wow. Thank you so much for giving me this space to share. I want to make sure that I see the time goes by pretty quickly with this kind of thing, which is good and challenging. So I want to say a couple words. I am uh, in the order of interbeing with Thich Nhat Hanh, and it's an engaged Buddhist practice. It's sort of coming from our our bodies and our sensation and our inner, like cultivating our inner stability in life, but doing that in the context of everyday living and being in relationship with life as it is and the people around us. And I'm now calling it the sensate world, the world around us, which is also in its own way moving and very much alive. It's where we call it we use this term interbeing, this sense of everything being interconnected and therefore everything in some ways being alive and animate and feeling. So I know that this is sort of, I think it's a little bit of a focus on families, and I thought a little bit about what's important and how what my experience tells me about how we could respond as families and communities to the climate crisis, which is also a kind of reality of our world and our experience, that we need our senses to be, and our emotions as well. When the senses are engaged, there's often an emotional pathway that opens. And so being present and in contact with that reality, which often means some kind of suffering, there's elements of suffering in that, it opens channels of feeling in us. We might feel sad or frustrated, even afraid or terrified, angry. And those energies, for me, they're so valuable and precious when they're experienced together in community and honored, and because it's our emotions that tell us through our senses what we value and what's important in the world. Like to see a child suffering, it evokes this emotional response in us that's so profound and powerful and moves us to act. So I would say a really important area cultivation for us in responding is our grounding in compassion, this wonderful capacity to care, like, and the image, it's a it can be confused and with this kind of feeling of empathic distress, it's sometimes called, where we take on the feelings of another person and get agitated. But this is more of a spacious feeling. And the best way I know to invite it in is to imagine holding a child in your arms who might be in pain and just being there with that child, not right away trying to fix the situation, right? But allowing the contact to happen and creating a sense of space in ourselves, that a greater sense of knowing that sort of this energy has meaning. There's maybe pain there, but there's meaning in it and there's power in it, and that there's enough space for it to be held and it will reveal something to us. It's also in the process of change and transformation. That's also, those are powerful ways of being in touch with pain in a way that can open compassion for us. Another thing, last thing I'll just say, I think it's really important for me is to acknowledge our collective power. So in Buddhism, sometimes we talk about uh, power, the true powers being things like understanding and non-fear and generosity, things like that as being powerful. And there's also an implicit power there, which is a part of this sort of three jewels or triple gems. And it's the last part, and that is the power of community. And this was very well understood in the time of the Buddha, but it's also the ground of what makes us human. We've been living in groups and coordinating and cooperating together. Uh, it's really what defines us in some ways as a species, our ability to collaborate and communicate and share. And it's a tremendous source of power, and we need to access that power in order to respond with resistance to the harm that's taking place around us through various kinds of disconnection that lead to the climate crisis in a way that we can extract and exploit because of being separated from that. And so as we sort of reclaim our power and see that we have this amazing agency, we are sort of choosing every day what the world will look like collectively, whether it is allowing people to drive or to drill oil wells or to make more plastic or more automobiles. These are all things that we're choosing collectively to consent to. So, and allowing our governments to say that those things are okay. So to challenge that is to really, in some ways, withdraw our consent collectively. And it only really works collectively. Individually, we can choose what to consume. We can limit, we can ride a bicycle, we can do a lot, we can recycle, we can do a lot of things that are very valuable and important, but they don't change the systemic structure, the way corporate power and political power is organized that allows the system as it is to continue. So to challenge that, we have to challenge that on a collective level by withdrawing our support from that process. Things like, and what we've done in New York City is sitting down to meditate in the street in a way. So it's also a kind of disruptive process where we don't allow the processes of harm or business as usual to just continue. We actually take this action to get in the way of that. And another way, so that's one way of sort of non-compliance with business as usual, the pattern of harm. And another way is um, something like, we haven't organized this, but it would be something like refusing to pay tax or our debt, so withdrawing support that way. So can this be something, so I've been supporting this group called Extinction Rebellion here in the city, and that's a nonviolent civil resistance movement in the spirit of Dr. King and Gandhi. It's really bearing witness to the harm, but also I want to say this because we say and we want families to be a part of that, and the way that we try to do it is by making it really peaceful and safe. So coordinating with police in advance if we need to, but also having things like music and free food and people and places where it's safer for children and families to be and still participate and be present, to sing, and just to make it, to bring this energy of celebration into this, our acts of resistance and creativity as well, bringing creativity into all those things. So that's some of what we've been doing. And now I want to, there's a photo that I want to show you that I asked Mark to have ready, and this is the last thing I'll do, and we can
I'm
do some dialogue.
bringing it up now.
So
Can you see it?
Can you see that? Hope so. So here's just this is a mother's picture from a Mother's March. Recognition, support, caring, protecting people. And this is in the UK. You can see the little underground sign. There's some interesting signs as well in the background. And people bring all kinds of different, they come as they are to these protests, but these mothers are all holding their children, and many of these children will be alive statistically in 2100, when sea levels are expected to be about 6 feet higher than they are now. So that would be pretty, but you can see the joy there. There's a way to bring resistance and joy, creative resistance and joy, and together. And it's powerful because it's like we care about our children, and I think also our children can really be our teachers in this movement, to show us, because the wonder and the curiosity of a child about the natural world can reteach us how precious it is to be sensually in contact with the world and its profound beauty and value. Moves us toward the energy protection. Okay, I think I spoke too much, but I'm done. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. There's so much to think about and feel. And we still have a good amount of time, so we're doing well. And I think there are enough of us to just stay in a conversation all together. We have the choice to do breakout rooms, which is one way to do these calls. How do you feel about people just responding or asking questions?
I'd love to hear responses. I'd love to hear if people take a moment and just contemplate, like, imagining the climate crisis and how they relate to it, how they connect to their own children and grandchildren maybe, and how it feels actually, to really notice what you feel and what's alive relative to that, and maybe not even necessarily in relationship to what I said, but what's important to you, you know, unless you do have a question for me. But yeah, just to have that would be great.
Hello, everyone.
Go ahead, Laura. Yeah.
This is totally wonderful. And one of the things that has come up in the work that many of us do in Shambhala with families and children, one thing in Los Angeles, where I am, is that we're trying to be careful of not overloading our kids with all the fear that comes so naturally with families and with environmental distress, so that children don't feel that they have to personally take care of this right away themselves. And so I'd like to just share that with this group. And if anyone has anything to say about that, we did have a 13-year-old wonderful girl in our group just decide one day, after we've been discussing environmental issues, she said, at the next session, can I just bring my phone and do an iMovie of interviewing kids about what they think? And she did that. She created a 5-minute video that's gone out to lots of people. And that was her contribution. So there's all kinds of things we can do.
Yeah, I heard that. I don't know if it's all right to reflect, but I heard that importance of protecting our children, but also maybe protecting ourselves from too much information overload. And, I think that's really valuable, limiting. In our tradition, we really encourage people to limit the amount of news that they consume. And sometimes the news doesn't allow us to connect to the richness of the dimensions of it, because there is a pain and suffering that I think it's important to be in contact with, but there's also the richness of the living world that's so profound, to allow ourselves to feel. Even this morning, to prepare for this talk, I went out. You think of New York City, it's just buildings and skyscrapers, but it's an island also, and there's water and light reflecting off the water, and seagulls soaring, and there's tremendous amount of beauty available. So I think a healthy balance is important. I think it's also, like I was saying, once we have that regulation happening, where our nervous system is regulated through our practice of meditation and being in contact with nature and being held and holding each other in community, then we have a kind of space to feel the pain. And then it's important to feel that, because it is a source of energy to take action. Like this is what I often use is, just as a mother loves and protects her only child at the risk of her own life, let us cultivate boundless compassion for all beings. That is from one of the oldest, I'm learning now from Buddhist history, the current research, that's one of the oldest prayers in the Buddhist tradition, the Metta Sutra, so there's a power in that. And I think when we engage in that in ourselves, our children also learn it from us, that it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can be a source of energy, just like you were pointing out. And they can also act. There's a whole, you've seen Greta Thunberg, and you've seen the Fridays for Future people, young adults, and in XR, there's a whole independent group of XR youth that have designed and led some of their own actions, and they've spoken at City Hall, calling on the city to create a real democratic process, a citizens' assembly, which is a sort of it's a body that's not selected by votes, and so it's not controlled by corporations or money. It's a fair, representative body, people from all walks of life. And that's a really profound kind of thing to ask for. And so young people are asking for this for a democratic. So they're understanding. Yeah. So I shouldn't talk too much. Thank you, Laura. Any other feelings that were coming up for people, or experiences that are important to you?
Hi, thank you for the fulfillment. I'm really glad to meet you. Marna has told me about you.
See you in person. It's lovely. Thank you.
It was interesting when you said something about that community defines us as a species.
Yeah.
And what occurred also was that it also it makes us similar to all other species, not that are in community. So it actually it makes us like everything else.
Just like everything else. That's right. Yeah.
Um, to work together,
Yeah.
looking at other animal species and plant species as well.
Right. So powerful. Yeah, that's one of the things that I've really so much appreciated from learning a little bit about indigenous wisdom is this sense that the animals, the plants and animals, even the water and the sky and the stones are our teachers, are here to teach us how to relate. You know, they have all this information and we know how to do it too, but listening to them is so profound. So thank you for, it's so easy, and I can do that too, to just think of the human world and to lose track of the deep connection that we have with the, and how we really fit in there. So thank you for that reminder. I think one of the things that was so I was actually at court yesterday. I went to court down on 1 Center Street in New York City because we had done this demonstration blocking 34th Street at 6th Avenue in front of Macy's on Black Friday to say this is not the day to be driving or buying things. This is a sort of day where we should stop and be present for the suffering of the earth. And we got arrested for doing that, a group of us. But being in the court, there was a young man who was telling me about how, as a species, one gift that we have, because each species has such remarkable gifts, and we have our own gifts that we can share, right? Thinking of sharing it with the animal and plant world is the way I like to look at it. But one of the gifts we have is that if I begin to tap on my body, you can immediately pick up that rhythm and tap with me at the same rate, you know. And that is very profound. It's our ability to synchronize our consciousnesses is highly, it's totally clear that all species are doing that. And our way of doing it is kind of unique and special, but we do have this very tightly knit sense of togetherness that's so special. And I think sometimes we've suffered in the last thousands of years in our civilizations because we've lost that intimate structure, large cities and oppressive systems to kind of generate food for everyone and leading to their oppressive structures. And so I think reclaiming that, and I think that's what Sangha means to me on some level, this small group where there's intimate trust and connection is a really important pathway for healing that I see. Anyway, some of my thoughts there. Yeah, so valuable to see how life is interconnected and how that's part of our journey too. Thank you for bringing that up.
So I'm going to ask a question. So I try to reach people who talk a lot about the overwhelm and busyness.
Mm-hmm.
But many of these people, so I offer meditation often in many different communities, and many people are unhappy about the busyness and the overwhelm, but they're still many steps away from sitting down. And so I'm just thinking about, I've been trying to develop more and more skillful ways to reach the overbusy who may be, still many steps away from sitting down. And So I just, I play with this idea of gentle ways I keep offering, I've offered certain people for, years and years, and sometimes they come years and years later. So I'm just curious about how
How do I,
you would offer generously the invitation to slow down when I think the news in the busy mind to many feels like they're doing something.
I,
And what I felt after the practice right now was like the relief of the space that to me is much more generative, right? So when I let my thoughts rest, which is my new image of not just resting myself, but letting my thoughts rest, then I have more space to be generative and come up with meaningful action, if that's called for. So, skillful ways to reach those who are not quite ready to
Yeah.
take a seat.
wow. Yeah, it's good. I think it's good if we all reflect on that, how we wish for that, how we long for that stopping and resting in ourselves, in our maybe in our city spaces or in our public spaces, in our relationships, with our friends and loved ones. I think that's power. There's power there, right? Because again, I'm directing us, trying to direct us back to the felt sense and the feeling and the energy in the body that as we connect with our own wish to be still, to be, and what that is and what it feels like, there's a power in it. And so our own creativity there is best, our own stopping with others is the best creative answer, our own insight from our experience. I know something that I do in New York City that I noticed how fast the city moves, and how, because I'm in resonance with it, I also tend to want to move fast because the people will be rushing by me. There's a rhythm to it, And so I have started this practice of just intentionally walking a little bit slowly to the subway, even and noticing when I'm late, my sense of lateness and what I might lose, learning to apologize for being late. And also sort of setting some okayness around that, because there's a kind of oppression of time that we live with as well, right? To be on time. And our ancestors didn't know about digital clocks. That's a new, or any kind of clock. That's a very new thing. So it disrupts our rhythms in some way. So how to be resistant, that's an act of defiance and resistance and being creative with it. And I think when it feels good, it's also beautiful. When people see you stop, just take a breath. It doesn't have to be acknowledged in words. That's communication on a nonverbal level. That's the deep level in which we communicate with each other. And so doing that at a meal when everyone's talking over each other and someone says something to you and you stop and take a breath like that and feel into what's happening for you before responding, then you're communicating something quite profound, I think. Another practice that I do is I have started doing, because there's this tendency to go by people, to pass by people on the street, and that is to slowing down and also noticing the people coming and going, not like in a way that's gonna bother them, but just, okay, this person is there and they're coming. And then the people on the street who are some often in pain, the homeless people, one practice, another one that I do is stopping and observing from a discreet, non, respectful space, and just being in contact with that person, to feel what I feel, to see this person alone or in pain on the street. It's really, it brings me energy. You can feel sad or distressed, and I think that's important to acknowledge when that's happened. To me, when that happens, if I feel distressed about it, then I know I have to come back to the place of touching joy and being nourished with the food of community and connection and love and care and the good, and that, because I don't have enough space in my nervous system. But when there's enough space and I'm present with that pain, then it moves me. I want to act. Right? I have energy. Like, this is not okay. I need, not only maybe I can go and speak to that person. Do you need something? Are you okay? But also on the collective, like, whatever process is driving this, I have to keep meditating and with my community and asking the question of how can we respond to transform this together and disrupt these processes of harm in a skillful way. And yeah, so it's beautiful though to be in that. We're in that. There's a tension there too when there's longing like that. I'm longing for the collective stopping. And yeah, it's important to honor that too and to be curious about it. I also really love the practice that I learned from nonviolent communication, which I think is really valuable and intersects quite well with Buddhist teachings on loving speech. And that is to ask for what we want by name. That's the way I put it. Sometimes we see and we just hope that the other person will understand us or the people around us will know what's important to us. And I think it's an act of courage and vulnerability. There's a lot of work now on this courageous action, kind of willing to experience a negative feedback or something. That's a vulnerability. We're risking something. And I think that's also what we're talking about here as we do these creative, disruptive actions. We're risking, risking arrest, we're risking people yelling at us, being upset. And I think when we ask for what we want by name, there's also a risk there, because the risk is that the answer is no. That's painful. But taking the risk, it's like we might be able to receive, or we might learn about why there's a no there. And so the question, the request, or the asking by name, it could be, would you be willing to sit with me for 2 minutes in quiet, or to be quiet and observe, to look at the trees, or to just, be still for even a moment. And so, yeah, that's a risky thing to do. People be like, some people might, but it's also a great learning experience. Okay, so, the time goes by so fast. The talk. Thanks for listening to me. I wanted to say one other thing, because I was talking about the music thing and how we have this instinct with the rhythms. And it's also, there's a beautiful book, it's called The Million Years of Music. And it talks about how that's an ancestral from the animal world, that, all animals in life are kind of making this rhythmic music, and we're just a continuation of that. So I forgot to add that part, but it is important to see how the connection is. Maybe is there time for one more?
I think, well, we have 5 more minutes and I don't have very much to say, other than whoever wants to talk about more would stay on the call after 1. So why don't we see if there's more, if there's anyone else who would like to share or ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Susan's there. Thank you. You're muted, Susan.
Everything you said was just the last talking you were doing was reminding me of a time when I was trying to figure out what to do. I've been teaching 6 and 7-year-olds, first graders, for most of my career. And I bring them out to I live in Nova Scotia and I live in the woods, and I bring them on a field trip every spring when it's quite something in the forest behind my house, all the moss and the new life that's springing forth after the long winter. And I was really struggling with what was my message about climate change, you know? And what I ended up doing was thinking about my own connection with the earth. And for me, it was, I had to ask myself the question, where did I learn what I value as beauty? And so I actually created some activities around that with the children. And I got one idea from a friend, which is I gave them all picture frames that were just, you know, cardboard picture frames. And when we were in this beautiful part of my woodland where it's incredible, these big rocks covered in all these like hundreds of different kinds of moss and lichen, and we walk into the woods there silently. And then when we arrive, I passed out these frames and asked them to have a partner and to look around and catch something that speaks to them that's beautiful. And then they took turns sharing that with each other. And sometimes they were things that were up close and sometimes it was far away, but they would frame it and then they would invite their friend to come and look at it. And it was just, you can do that anywhere in the city, and, you know, it doesn't have to be in this, you know, countryside. But it was very interesting for me to take it down to that place of saying, how do we actually develop the value and that meaningful connection with the earth, and what is beauty? You know, I'm looking out right now and it's absolutely stunning. The sun is like blazing and there's this huge white pine tree outside my window, and, you know, and the clouds are just fluttering. I mean, it's everywhere. But how did I learn that was beautiful? Did I learn that because my parents reflected that to me, or the books that I read? I don't know, but I think it's an important piece of working with children. So I just wanted to offer that. Thank you. And thank you. I really enjoyed what you're sharing with us very much.
Thank you so much. I think that's just such a beautiful piece of wisdom to close with. I don't think I could say that better. The curiosity you expressed too about where does that come from? It's so powerful to approach our experience and our world. That's something that children can reteach us too. I think that natural inquisitiveness and suspending for a moment. It's like this because, you know, and yeah, then there's more, somehow there's more to see in those moments. So very beautiful. And it's an important, because I think that sense of beauty that we have innately, and that children and all of us know instinctively, that we can cultivate it, right? Because the Buddha's path also talks about the cultivation of mind, and how there are qualities of mind like compassion and curiosity and wonder and the experience of beauty and generosity. Those are all things that can be strengthened in the way that we live, and worth doing. So precious. And I think when we see that deep oneness with, say, the pine tree you can see out the window, and the knowledge, there's a knowledge there that we're of one body, you know, that comes into us over time. And even I think for children, it's sort of intuitive because there's no sense of self at the early ages. It's just sensate experience and the wholeness of it all. And as that happens for us, and we reclaim that through our practice, I think there's such a power because we know instinctively to protect those species and those beings, that we can't do anything else but respond to that. And I think the way we respond also, we know in the same way that we've been speaking about here, it comes from the body up. Like we can use our minds to try to imagine, no, I need to change this structure and this person and that thing. And that's also quite powerful too. But I think when it integrates up from the body and the mind together, that we kind of, we get a different kind of intuition, and our relationships become a source of power too. Oh, look at the pine. Wow. I was wanting to see in the blue sky. This is a great exercise too, because it's also like looking into a mirror. Looking at the natural world is also, everywhere we look is always a mirror. It's a reflection of us. So that can be really powerful too. So much to do and share and talk about, but our time, I think, has gone by. So I feel a lot of love, a lot of gratitude, and hope we can keep doing this somehow. Anyway, but I'd love to turn it back over to Gal. Thank you very much for letting me share with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for such a wonderful hour of contemplations, leaving us with so much to think about. So before we close, for those who have to go, I put down in the chat, I don't know if everyone knows that if you press chat at the bottom, there's a way to communicate by typing to each other. And what I wrote, for those of you who may not be able to say, is to stay, that if there are any questions that you weren't able to ask right now, or if there are questions that you would love to explore in other weeks around environment, or even other questions around family and children, just email me with that, and then we'll bring it back into this space. And yeah, so my email is dalanarezo@mac.com, and I put that into the chats.
Sorry.
So Mark is asking, I wonder if people can coordinate with XR Mindful Rebels. And so that's a question. I'm trying, okay. And Myron, we will definitely add you to the list so you can continue to join us. I'm so honored that you were able to join us, Charlene and Myron from India. It's so wonderful that you've been here. And I'm just hoping, I'm sorry, this is a little, I'm hoping that we have everybody's email who has joined the call today. If you feel like you want to hear from us and you haven't in the past, please just type your email into the chat, because that will be a way that we can reconnect with you and send you updates. So I know we're going over just like 2 minutes. So, so questions in the chat, your email, and I think I will transition now, as you're all doing this, to talking about the next month or two. So is everybody here staying with us to talk about that? And I don't know if Brotherman just left us.
I'm here. I
Are you there?
reconnected. I
Oh, you're
reconnected
there.
on my mobile gadget because I'm
Got it.
gonna
You're
I'm
in.
gonna have to leave pretty soon.
Okay.
But I want to I just thought it'd be easier to be on the mobile
Gotcha.
device.
Okay.
But I'm happy to, I want to hear what people, any feedback or on the structure and what we could do or how going forward. Yeah, I want to be mostly listening, but yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, I will just say that we have carved out the next 2 calls to address the same topic, whether it's a continuation of today or in some way that generates out of today. So it's an
Gala, do you want to stop recording just in case anybody?
That's correct. I will now stop recording. Thank you for the reminder.